Sales of small hatchbacks here in Australia have declined over the last few years, mainly because most people are now buying an SUV. Everybody seems to want more space and practicality, but for some people, they don't necessarily need that, so a small hatchback will fit the bill perfectly well. Unfortunately, a lot of manufacturers are steering away from that category because it's a declining market, but it's good to see some manufacturers sticking it out and bringing out brand new models. For some people, they might be something that's nippy, easy to park, cheap to run, easy to maintain, and will do the job for them perfectly well. In today's video, we're having a look at the brand new 2024 MG3. We've got the entry-level model with the petrol engine, which is the cheapest version you can get, and starts at $25,000 drive away here in Victoria. It's one of the cheapest cars you can now buy here in Australia. The previous model was sub $20,000, and that was really cheap. But as we'll see as we go around this video, they've made big improvements of how the car drives, the technology, the safety equipment, and just the overall fit and finish of this brand new model. So let's have a look around this brand new 2024 MG3, see what it's all about before we take it out on the open road. So first off, the design of the car has radically changed than the previous model. The older models much squarer, a bit more angular, where this one is a little bit more rounded and much more modern looking. Some people might or might not like the look of the front of this car. I don't think it's too offensive myself, but as an overall design, I think it's a really good looking car. Now under this new curvy looking bonnet, we've got a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine, putting out 81 kilowatt and 142 newton meters of torque. It's driven through the front wheels with a CVT gearbox, and fuel economy is rated at 6 litres per 100. In the week I've been driving the car, I've been getting about just over 7 litres per 100, so a little bit more than the manufacturer claims, but that's quite normal these days. You don't seem to get what exactly is said on the sticker on most cars. But it's a good thing to drive. The car does come with a 10-year warranty, which goes up to 250,000 kilometres. So for most people, that will be absolutely plenty, because these cars will probably find themselves mostly around the city or using for the school run. So you're not really going to get up to that sort of mileage parameters in 10 years. The nice thing is you also get roadside assistance for that 10 years as well, as long as you service it at an MG dealership. But that's a really good sort of aftermarket package as well. So they're not just looking at the overall cost of the car, they're thinking about the actual running cost of the car as well, which is fantastic from MG. Being that this is the base model, we don't get fancy things like front parking sensors or 360 cameras, but we do get quite a nice looking set of 16-inch alloy wheels. The mirrors are electrically folding and heated as well. And the overall design and look of the car is really, really nice. It doesn't scream base model at you. It doesn't have like hubcaps or bits and pieces like that. It's actually quite a nice looking car. So the more modern styling actually continues around the back of the car as well. We've got this nice sort of wraparound rear lights at the back. We've got rear parking sensors, and we've also got a reverse camera. The basics you expect on any car these days, really. The tailgate opens up to a rather respectable 293 litres of carrying capacity, and if you fold the rear seats down, they'll go up to 983 litres, so pretty good for a small car. The only downside, if you want to fold the rear seats down on this base model, is the rear seat is a one piece. It doesn't get a 60-40 split, so you can't carry passengers and extend your luggage space at the same time, which is a bit of a downside. But you got to take the rough with the smooth bit, I guess, when you buy a base model. So let's jump inside this new MG3 now and have a look. We've got remote central lock-in, which is obviously a basic these days. The interior is actually really, really nice. I'm actually quite impressed by the interior of this entry-level model. One thing I really did notice when I first jumped in the car was how comfortable these seats are. They're lovely and soft. They've got plenty of support down both your legs and your ribcage area. Really, really comfortable. Fantastic seats, which is really impressive. So the general layout of the dash is really, really nice as well. So let's jump inside, have a look exactly what we've got in front of us. Let's bring the car to life. So we've got a 7-inch digital instrument cluster there, which displays all your normal bits and pieces. Nice little startup graphic as well with the MG logo. And then over in the centre there, we've got the 10.25-inch infotainment display, which we'll get to in a second. So let's have a look in front of us then. So we've got a nice, it's not leather, it's sort of textured plastic, I suppose, steering wheel. But nice enough to hold. It misses that sort of centre spoke like a lot of MGs do these days. The left-hand side, you've got things like your adaptive cruise control, You've got voice control there as well, and a little star button, which you can use to assign as like a favourite button if you like for a shortcut. On the right hand side, you think you've got like your phone button, the button there which will operate the menus on the screen in front of the driver, another star button which I'd recommend using to operate your air conditioning, because that's a bit fiddly too, which we'll come to in a second. And then this button is a multi-function button which you can use to adjust either the volume of the radio, temperature or fan speed of your air conditioning. So once you get your head around it, it's relatively easy to use, but at first glance it's like, what do these buttons actually do? So you do have to persist with that one a little bit. So in front of us, we've got the sort of standard bits and pieces here that you'd expect on your driver display. Let's just bring that down a little bit, that's better. So yeah, you get normal bits and pieces, so like your speedo, your traffic sign recognition, your fuel computer here on the right hand side. Not sure how well that's coming out because the sun's reflecting on the screen a little bit. So yeah, it's a really easy display to read and not overcomplicated with too much information. So that brings us over to the infotainment screen then. So it's an okay system. I've reviewed this in other MGs, and like I said before, it's not the best system that I've used. It actually needs to use Apple CarPlay to get the best out of the system. So here we have obviously just the home screen here. You can connect to your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Unfortunately, you do have to use a cable here to actually plug your phone in. It's not wireless, which is a little bit disappointing here in 2024. Then you can connect your phone obviously via Bluetooth. We've got the buttons here for the climate control and then your entertainment. Now with the climate control, the downside to this, it's easy to use when your screen is like this. But when you're using your Apple CarPlay or your Android Auto, you have to come out of the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, go back to your home screen, and then go back to air conditioning, because the buttons down here don't operate the air conditioning, which is a bit frustrating. Well, certainly not very easily anyway. Other bits and pieces, you've got obviously your radio and phone and bits and pieces down here. The little car button takes you into some of the settings, and this is where you find what they call MG Pilot, which is all your driver assistance and safety features. Now the downside to this, like a lot of manufacturers, is they're quite annoying. Certainly things like lane keeping aid and bits and pieces like that, or the speed sign recognition, they're so hypersensitive that as soon as you go like a kilometre over the limit or get anywhere close to a white line, they're beeping and just being basically distracting. So I personally tend to switch them off as soon as I get in the car. So you basically have to come into this menu, you have to go to your MG Pilot, you've got to go down and turn off everything that you don't like. And it is a bit frustrating that you can't turn it off and leave it off, or at least it was easier to actually, turn off once you get inside the car. But a lot of manufacturers are like that these days, so it's not just MG that do this. A lot of manufacturers are exactly the same. Down below then we've got volume buttons here for the radio, we've got a home button for the sat-nav screen. This button here does something with the air conditioning, but I can't really figure out. It's like an on and off button. Heated rear window, fast demist for your front windscreen. And then when you press this one, it brings up the aircon screen, but it only does that when you're not in Apple CarPlay. So again, very frustrating. You've got your usual buttons there, which are fairly easy to use, but it's a strange way of actually accessing it. Anyway, just below that, we've got a few charging options here. So as I said, you have to use a cable to use your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which is on the left side. So that's a USB-A cable. In the center there, we've got a 12-volt power socket. And then on the right-hand side, there's a USB-C charging cable. So you can do fast charging if you want to, but you just can't do that and use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto at the same time. We do have a couple of nice sized cup holders in there, which is quite nice to see. Now, being that this is the petrol model, we get a traditional gear stick, whereas on the hybrid, you get the little sort of round dial to select your gears. So it's pretty straightforward to use. We've got an electronic handbrake with an auto hold function down here as well, which I was actually quite surprised to see. I was half expecting a manual handbrake. We've then got a bit more storage under here as well. So we've got the armrest. We've got that little slide which comes across. So when the armrest is shut, you've got a bit of secure storage there. But when you open it all up, you can either slide that backwards there and open up that bit to access that bit of storage. So it's actually quite a nice, neat little tray, and then you've got a bit of storage under there as well. So that's actually quite a neat way of doing things. The overall cabin itself is really nice. It feels quite spacious in here for a small car. The only downside to me is the fact that you've got a black roof lining. So being a small car makes you feel a little bit claustrophobic in here, particularly as we don't have a sunroof on this base model. I'd probably recommend going for the top of the range model because you do get a sunroof, plus a few other bits and pieces. But if the budget doesn't allow, this base model is perfectly fine. We get nice little sort of bits of colour around here with the stitching across the dashboard. And you can probably just see this sort of fake carbon fibre sort of pattern etched into the door trims and dashboard as well. So it's actually not a bad place to be. Certainly much more modern and appealing than the previous model MG3. As you can see, getting into the back of the MG3 is actually quite easy. The rear door opens nice and wide, so it's pretty handy. The actual sound of the door when you shut isn't too bad, it's not too tinny. Side windows are pretty decent. The roof lining is quite low, so you do have to duck your head a little bit when you get into the car. But once you're in, it's actually quite a bit of headspace. Legroom is really good as well, and you can actually fit your feet under the driver's seat. This seat is in my position, and I've got plenty of legroom behind myself. It's good to see we've got a couple of air vents here for the air conditioning for rear passengers. We've also got a USB-A charging point as well, so you can plug your phones or tablets in to charge as you're driving along. Other than that, it's pretty basic back here. We don't get any fold-down centre armrests with cup holders. As I mentioned earlier, the rear seat isn't a 60-40 split, it's just a whole one-piece folding seat. We do get the ISOFIX child seat mounting points, but that's about it really back here. We don't get even any sort of pockets on the back of the seats to store bits and pieces, but generally it's not a bad place to be. It's comfortable back here. The seats are just as comfortable as the ones that we get in the front. The fabric is lovely and soft. It's actually quite nice. I did mention earlier the black headlining, which does make it a little bit claustrophobic in here, but the actual view from the back seat is pretty decent. So you get a bit of light coming in from the side. There's a fairly decent view from the back towards the front of the car. And yeah, even though it's a small car, it doesn't feel claustrophobic or sort of too cramped in here. It's probably best for two people in the back, but at a squeeze, you could get three. The transmission tunnel isn't too big, so the person sat in the middle of the row isn't going to have their knees around their ears. So the last piece of the puzzle in this MG3 review is to take you for a drive, see what it's like out on the open road, check it for things like tyre noise, wind noise, is it comfortable, is it good to drive, and that general type of thing. So let's head out on the road now and check out everything about the new MG3. So initial impressions then, very favourable. It feels nice and light to drive, it's easy, really good visibility, it's comfortable. The only downside is you have to keep turning off all those annoying chirps and bings and bongs from the safety devices. Like I say, a lot of cars do it these days, which is quite frustrating. One strange thing I have noticed, I don't know whether this is interference from the Bluetooth on my phone, but every time you touch something on the screen, it makes this kind of interference click, which is really odd. I've never experienced it in a car before. I'll see if I can, I'll be quiet when I'll stop talking when I touch the button, and maybe you'll be able to hear it. It's like this little click, and it's really odd. I've never heard it before. Whether that's something that will come in a software update or whether they can't change it, I don't know. It is a little bit frustrating, if I'm honest, because in 2024 you shouldn't really be getting that sort of interference and that type of thing from a modern car. Another thing that you can hear particularly well in this new MG3 is the indicators. It's not because the car's really quiet, it's just like they're probably one of the loudest indicators I've ever heard on a car. You certainly, you'd never sort of be mistaken for leaving your indicators on, because yeah, they're really, really loud. I'll give you a demonstration in a sec. I'm just about to turn left at a roundabout, so that'll give you a bit of a demo of exactly how loud they are. Not sure how well that's picking up on the video, but you may have heard that. It's particularly loud. Not that that's necessarily a downside, at least you know your indicators are on. As an overall driving experience, there's really not much to dislike about this new MG3. It's bigger and it's wider and it's longer and it's better set up than the previous model, so it does make you feel like you're driving a slightly bigger car. The steering is really well weighted, it's not sort of too light and uncommunicative, so you know what's going on with the front wheels. I love the electric handbrake with the auto hold function, so when you're sat at a set of traffic lights, you don't have to keep your foot on the brake all the time. And when you touch the accelerator, it will deactivate the handbrake, so it's nice and easy to operate as well. So the 81 kilowatt worth of power that you get from this little 1.5 engine isn't necessarily going to set any land speed records. It's perfectly fine for use around town, and if you're not sort of pushing too hard on the accelerator, it's fairly quiet and refined as well. But if you do put your, want to accelerate a little bit harder and you put your foot hard in the accelerator, it does get quite noisy and a bit thrashy, and it doesn't sound very pleasant at all. But I don't imagine the sort of people that buy this car are going to be racing away from traffic lights and that type of thing. It's not that sort of car. What it's designed for, it does really, really well. It's comfortable, it's got lots of tech, it's got lots of safety, it's nice to drive, it's cheap to run, got a fantastic warranty and roadside assistance package, and at $25,000 in this day and age, it's actually pretty good value for money. A lot of small cars are now starting at sort of $30,000 plus, so to be under that sort of price bracket is quite a sort of good value for money proposition. If you want an MG3 with a few more features or a hybrid powertrain, you can go up to the top of the range model, which will give you things like a sunroof, better headlights, and a few more other bits and pieces. And you can have that with both engine options, so the petrol and the hybrid. You can get this base model with the hybrid as well for a few more $1,000s. So the question of whether you should buy one of these, I think it's a good little car. Personally speaking, I'd probably go for the top of the range with the hybrid powertrain, just because I like a few more features on the car, and also the hybrid powertrain not only gives you more power, but better fuel economy at the same time. But with that, you are looking at sort of mid-$30,000, around $35,000, which for a small car does start to get quite expensive. So that brings us to an end then to this review of the 2024 MG3. I hope you've enjoyed it and found out lots of information. If you've got any questions, you can leave them in the comment section for me below, and I'll answer them for you as soon as I can. If you've enjoyed it, give it a like and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also hit that notification bell, because that will tell you the next time a new video comes out. That just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video very soon.